And now we have the bungee bass. Let's see how that sounds. Okay, probably one of the more interesting parts of this is this bungee bass sound. To me, that sounds pretty Jon Hopkinsy. I've labelled it MS-20 bungee bass, and also bungee bass. I don't even know where I heard that term. I mean, the bass line does sound like a kind of bungee rope effect. You know, this sort of like elastic tightening and release of something. So I think that's a pretty good term for it. I've built this using analog. I'm just going to quickly go through the settings here because I feel like that's the easiest way of explaining the sound. But it has that kind of elasticy Jon Hopkinsy sound that it's just so spot on for me. So I have both oscillators turned on and the noise engine turned on. The top oscillator is down 2 octaves. Nothing on the semi, no detune. And then the filter is set to high pass, but it's not high passing anything. But there is some resonance, about 37%. And then the amp here is turned off, but that does turn on at the end, but we'll come back to that. Oscillator 2 set to 0 octave, but that looks like that jumps. These look like they both jump up and down, but that's just for progression more than the sound itself. It's upper fifth, so 7 semitones. And then the filter here is set to low pass 12 instead of high pass 12. And it looks like it's automated, but for now it's just set to 164 with a bit of resonance. And that's going to give us this plucky, kind of filtered sound. Both amplifier, so this amplifier 2 is turned on all the time. It's got a bit of envelope here, and the decay is quite short. Release is incredibly short. Sustain is all the way down, and the attack is very short. And then with amplifier 1, it looks like the decay is quite open to 6 milliseconds, short sustain, and a long release. But as we go through, let's see if we can see where that opens up. So not here. Gosh, so many settings. It looks like it does. Something happens here. Let's have a look. Perfect. So let's just loop this section and see what changes in the plugin. So amp 1 turns on. And you can hear where the octave jumps up here. So yeah, this amp turning on here is giving just a much more driven sound. But yeah, back to the start here. Oh, what's happening here? Yeah, because you could see the filter opening up on Oscillator 2 here. All of these things just keep the track moving, textural differences. LFO wise, we've got a triangle wave on the top here, and then a sine wave on the bottom, and I think that has a lot to do with the sound, again, moving over time. I've got the bottom LFO set to dotted notes, 1/2, and then the top one is just set to a frequency, a really, really slow moving one. So yeah, as we progress, it'll keep things changing. Vibrato's turned up a little bit, well, quite a lot, 41%, but a very low rate. So again, these three things together are very slowly changing the sound. And then that is, of course, running through an LFO tool to keep everything out of the way of the kick. Let's loop it and turn that off. But let's turn all of this off. Okay, that's better. Let's turn this off as well. So the rhythm, again, much like the snares and the percussion, the rhythm is hugely important here. It's looks like it's been played in by hand, so I must have tapped this rhythm in on a keyboard and then maybe tightened it up a little bit, but we're falling onto the notes we're falling onto the downbeats again. So let's load that up just with the kick. Yeah, very bouncy. Yeah, you can hear the amp opening up a little bit there at the end. And then as we go through the chain, I think all I've done here, so well, firstly, LFO tool, that gives every so often one of these notes a very short sound compared to the length of the others, which helps keep it glued and random sounding. We have Pro Q3, again, rolling off the top end, bumping a little bit up, around 200 to 500 for a bit of thickness. Devil Lock. So Devil Lock you can hear immediately distorting and giving the sound some more grunt, even though it's only mixed 3 out of 10, so it's a really powerful plugin with a fast release because it's fast sound. Radiator, another Soundtoys plugin. Again, boosting the low end, the high end, the input, noisy, gritty sound. You could arguably get a similar sound though without using these two and using Ableton's own saturators. Oh gosh, where is everything? Driving color, here we go. So, you know, saturators, let's try that. Let's turn these two off, load in saturator. In fact, let's just load in one of the presets. A Bit Warmer is a really popular one. Yeah, that does a pretty great job. So we could load in that, and let's load in a little bit of overdrive. Let's start with no drive and see how it sounds. Awesome. Keep the tone down. Yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty close. Now, drum bus, used it earlier on the kick. Let's use it on this synth as well. Wow. Yeah, that's a real winner. So I'm opening it up here. Sounds pretty good. Sounds pretty close. So if we turn those off and then turn Devil Lock and Radiator on, it's a pretty close match. So yeah, with these three, you'd probably need to do a little bit more EQing and stuff to get it how you like. And then we have the RC20. Now this is really more than anything. It's another great plugin. More distortion here. I'm just using the vinyl one preset. It does have some vinyl noise, but I've turned that off. But really it's this wobble feature here, which is just more sonic information you're hearing. It's set to a very, very low rate, a very low amount, really, but it's slowly wobbling the pitch of the bass line like an old tape machine would. So I don't know how well it's gonna. It's a very subtle thing. Yeah, it's not too obvious, but you will miss it when it's not there. Is the kind of the thing with that sort of slow shifting pitch. It's like ear candy. It just keeps the synth, interesting. So not hugely necessary, but quite useful. Soothe 2 again, just pulling out some unwanted frequencies. You could do that by ear, to your own taste. And then Infinite EQ here, which is a slate EQ, again, just rolling off the low end, but you could do that with any standard Ableton EQ. So then these sounds here, again, are, let's hear them on their own. You can hear that they're processed versions of the bass line. And that's, again, going to be me using Portal to create that effect. But you could create that with, I mean, I think Ableton 11 has a lot of granulation tools and delay tools and things. Grain delay being a really popular one. In fact, why don't we take our baseline, freeze it, just to save on CPU, because this computer will suddenly stop working. I'm going to flatten it just for this example. You can always unflatten and unfreeze things. So now we just have the audio. And let's start dragging some granular effects. So let's grab grain delay first, because it's a pretty popular one. Zoom into this section. So with grain delay off, we just have our dry bass sound. So I'm going to turn the dry wet down. Let's turn spray up. You get that kind of bubbling, grainy effect. So I'm going to keep feedback down. Yeah, these kind of plucking, really great. And that extra texture, in my case, I've placed things like this at the end of every sort of, what is that, 4 bars, 8 bars? Just to keep everything moving and interesting and fresh. I find with the Jon Hopkins tracks that I love the most, compositionally, there isn't that much happening. There's, the drums and percussion, some kind of moving rhythmic bass line, sub, and then pads laid over the top. But what's amazing about that is that you never really need anything else. You're not looking for any other sounds, because those sounds are so dense and rich and textured, and they're constantly moving and evolving. Open eye signals, like nearly 10 minutes long, and apart from obviously the big breakdown at the end, it's just this constantly evolving, simple piece of music that probably only has about 6 notes in it. And it's amazing. It's one of my favorite songs. So it's really just trying to capture that sense of progression without having to overwrite any one part. I mean, this bass note, this bungee bass, is just one note the whole track. I mean, granted, I'm only a minute in, but it's so simple that the processes we're applying here are so interesting to the ear that you never really feel like you want anything else happening. So what I would probably do here is set up a new audio channel, which is what I've done here, and then chopped out my favourite parts by the looks of it. Set that to record, solo the bungee bass here, keep this set to resampling, so it resamples any signal within Ableton back into itself. And then I would just record a pass. And I'd move this around. And then I chop out the bits I liked the most. Actually, looking at that though, I've made an error. Yeah, make sure you have this set to 100% wet, so you don't get the dry signal. So let's just really quickly do that again, but with 100% wet. And the bass line solo. Oh, jeez. There we go. Great. Awesome. And then layered together. And then we just chop out anything we don't want, or just have it coming in at random places. Awesome. perfect. I mean, some of these waveforms look pretty similar to these, so I think this might be exactly what I did. But yeah, really useful. Really powerful way of waking up anything, really. So that's the bungee bass. Let's keep it going to the sub bass. Only a few more bits left. Again, just one note. And this is using Sublab, which is just a really colourful, characterful sub bass sound. Really low. Let me move that up an octave so you can hear it. It's pretty clean, pure sound, but with again, it has some really lovely drive, filtering options, volume and filter envelope options, and this is being sidechained by the top of the rock kick drum with a pretty quick release. You can hear some slight popping sounds, but I spent a long time trying to avoid that, but I kind of embrace it now. I quite like the pop of a sidechain being sort of pulled back in. I think it just adds more character to it. And if we play that now alongside our kick and our kick rhythm underneath, you can hear we've got rhythm, we've got a nice clean kick sound, and we've also got this ominous low sub bass. And then we'll layer the bungee bass in on top. Oh, gosh, sorry. Awesome, we're most of the way there. So again, we just have a compressor, a bit of utility. I've really made sure to roll off any information here above 100. Although it does look like at some point it opens up in the track. Oh, here. Awesome. Yeah, so here, opening up the filter on the sub bass a little bit it's just adding more movement, more character. And it's such a simple thing, but it will just wake this section up again. Okay, so finally, let's talk about the master. So I'm using the virtual tape machine here just to give everything a bit of weight and glue. So if I turn it, if I turn it off. You can hear it. Well, I can hear it, or at least I think I can hear it. Beefing up the low end, which tape will tend to do. This is by Slate Digital. It's part of their All Access Pass. However, you could do something similar again with Ableton's own. These drive and color folder bits are really, really great. I would argue that although they don't have anything I'm aware of that tries to mimic tape, a bit of saturation would do a similar job. So let's put a bit warmer on, turn this off. Obviously it's boosting the gain quite a bit there. But even still, you can hear the harder I push this, the more everything starts to just glue together. Like the definition of certain percussion sounds just seem to get mushed away into just texture and pressure. And I think the right amount of that is just perfect on a track like this. You know, aside from the obvious gain boost, I do think it's adding something there. And all I'm doing with this virtual tape rack is a similar thing, just using this tape plugin. But yes, you could do the same thing with saturation, I think, or a combination of EQ, saturation, distortion. And then I'm using the Oxford Inflator, which is this phantom weird plugin that makes things sound louder without actually making them louder. It's very strange. I don't really know how it works, but I'm pushing it pretty hard here. So let's hear it with and without. So yeah, kind of subtle effect, but one that I can't not include anymore. But yeah, I mean, it's again peppering on 5% of something to this track, which you can do without. I've just grown to like it. And then I'm using Ozone 9 here just because I'm not a mastering engineer. I'm not really that good at mixing, and Ozone 9 just tucks in the low end. It's boosted the highs, which we've rolled a lot off. So it's trying to replace some of those. It's applying some compression, some limiting, and the maximizer. Really, just a personal preference. I like to have it on there to hear things at their loudest without clipping. But you could just do the same thing with a limiter and a compressor, Ableton Zone, until you get it where you want it. But they're just the ones I'm using. So I hope you found this useful. I hope I haven't rambled on too much. And there's something in there that you can apply to your own tracks. It's worth saying a lot of these plugins that I've used here are just personal preference. You don't have to use any of them. I've just grown to enjoy the sound of a lot of them. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it, and I'll speak to you soon.